Hi everybody, it's Jonathan Betzler, one of the Acthound instructors. Here once again with Devon Michaels. We talked a little bit the other day. I do know other actors, I promise. We just happened to see each other a couple days in a row. And
sometimes I'm other actors.
He acts as other actors. We talked yesterday with him, obviously from Gilmore Girls fame, but I forgot to mention that also he started on Broadway, so you've been acting for since you were 11.
Yes. And it just came up right after we cut yesterday because that's one of the weird moments you realize almost decades later. You're like, oh yeah, when I was so affected by that movie, I ended up becoming an actor professionally like 2 years later.
So if you didn't see that video, we talked yesterday about the film. I asked him performances that touched him, and he talked about The Elephant Man, Anthony Hopkins, and John Hurt's performances, and that he saw that at a very young age and inspired to become an actor, and he was successful by 11. Then brought him to Los Angeles to do Goodbye Girl. What was the name of the Western again that you just did?
They just changed the name of it. It was called Last Dollar, but now they just changed it to Long Shadows.
Long Shadows. I like the first name better. Anyway, my indie film.
I'll tell them.
They care what I think. I'm here. We're here because every month in either Los Angeles, New York, Milwaukee, or Chicago, I host classic movie screenings. Where the audience comes and they're surprised by what a classic film that I show, and Devon comes sometimes. And the film we show tonight is this film called The Goodbye Girl from 1977, which did win an Oscar for Best Actor. All the performances in the film were nominated, but did win an Oscar for Richard Dreyfuss. At the time, he was the youngest ever to win the Best Actor Oscar, since supplanted in that by Adrien Brody, who was a few months younger than he was when Adrien Brody won for The Pianist in 2002. So, I have one of my resident actors here, and I wanted to ask him, so you watched the performances in this film, Richard Dreyfuss in particular. What are your reactions to Richard Dreyfuss's Oscar-winning work here in The Goodbye Girl?
It's one of those performances that really made a lasting impression on me. Just as an actor and just as a person.
Even still, as you're nearing 70.
Even as I'm nearing 70 years old. No, because it's something I watched a lot when I was a kid. I used to, my uncle and aunt, I grew up on Long Island, and my uncle and aunt lived in Manhattan, and they used to come out, to visit us, and they would always bring, some video over. This is back in the VHS days. And they would always bring, they bring all different kinds of, things that I otherwise wouldn't have seen. Yeah. And this was one of them, and I remember liking it a lot, and my sisters and I ended up watching it easily 7 or 8 times, in the next couple of years.
But specifically, what about the performance?
In terms of Richard Dreyfuss, it's one of those scripts that could easily be too over the top. It definitely calls for a lot of big comedy.
Written by Neil Simon, and for those of you, I hope a lot of you know who Neil Simon is, but if you don't, we'll talk about it in class probably. But I just want to interject that for potential students.
Yeah, and Richard Dreyfuss just does a masterful job of hitting that exact line of making sure that you keep the comedic timing, that you get the humor, that you tell the story, that you're interesting, and also grounded the entire time as if it's any other dramatic piece of work.
Because the key is to make it feel like a real person, right? I mean, he's got all these jokes because Neil Simon has an almost sitcom-y kind of approach to a lot of his plays, and this particular one was not a play at first. It has been since turned into a Broadway musical in 1994, I think, with Martin Short and Bernadette Peters. But before that, it was just a direct screenplay, one of the rare ones that he wrote. He mostly did plays that became films later. But yes. What a lot of actors have failed to do with Neil Simon's work is find the truth and the balance between truth and comedy, where Elliot Garfield, I believe his name, it feels like a real person. Mm-hmm. However, I would say that I would not, if I were voting for the Oscars, I was not voting for the Oscars yet in 1977, believe it or not. And if I were
only 21 at the time.
Yeah, exactly. I would not. I wasn't part of the Academy yet. I would not have voted for Richard Dreyfuss. I would have voted for, here's another tidbit, another performance to look out for, Richard Burton in Equus in 1977. Also based on, this is not based on a play, but it could be, Neil Simon. But Equus is an amazing play written by Peter Shaffer. Do you know Equus?
Very well.
Do you know the film?
Yeah.
Richard Burton is phenomenal in it, so is Peter Firth in the supporting role. He was also nominated. I would have voted for Richard Burton myself. Thoughts?
I have not seen that film in easily 30 years. So I have to abstain.
Well, we'll have to dig up a scene for it, maybe for class. Class, by the way, starts on October 28th. It's virtual. It's online. You sign up at acthound.com, acthound.com, and it's a film acting class that I will be leading. It's an 8-week course, I believe. Starts October 28th. Devon will not be there because he already knows how to act, supposedly. But anyway, but we'll be breaking down. You'll be learning how to act, but we'll also be looking at scenes and clips and movies, to get to and be able to break them down and try and understand some of the choices these actors are making to make these performances grounded. To use a word that you're going to hear a lot in class. It's a word I use a lot. The other word I use a lot is verisimilitude, and that's something that Richard Dreyfuss captures as Elliot Garfield in this film.
I think I know why you haven't gotten other actors to be part of these videos.
I don't know. I can interpret that in 3 different ways.
No, it was just I was getting back at you for that remark.
Yeah. Anyway,
He's great.
October 28th. Sign up at acttown.com. Thanks very much, and have a good weekend.